Yes, Rick Banner, it is a bit of a sad day, given the goings-on in the Rolex to Sydney Hobart race, which, of course, we'll cover. Mark Hollins is in Boston. Paul Homchik here in the Bay Area saying hi. Mary Jude Szymanski, nice to see you back on with us from Philadelphia. Jeff Kitson's in a warmer than normal Michigan. He was checking on his boats, he told me earlier today.
Wow.
By text. Welcome to everybody. Ed Worley here in the Bay Area, or not quite Sacramento area, as we get this one over the starting line. Welcome. Live from San Francisco's Beach Street Yacht Club here in the Marina District Studio B, where we usually are these days, and have been for the last 7 of the 8 years we've been on the air. We've actually been 7 years in this studio.
Right.
Now, can you believe that?
Yes.
Just wrapping up our 8th year at doing this. And we have this show and our New Year's Eve show, and then we'll be into 2025. Hard to believe.
Yes. Progress.
My co-host, the Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, the coordinating producer, Julia Vedekint. I trust you are well.
Yes. I don't know why, but I am.
Well, because you're alive and it's a nice day. The sun has come out here in San Francisco. Welcome to all of you. We're delighted to have you with us. I'm your host, of course, Tom Eamon. I represent the Bellboy Yacht Club on this show. I have my Governor's Cup pin on today.
Oh, good.
In fact, Julia
Yeah.
represents the St. Francis Yacht Club, and we're members of several other yacht clubs besides the Beach Street Yacht Club.
That
Julia.
famous, internationally famous.
It is. We have 160 some odd members now.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
We double their dues every year.
You're the Commodore. You double the dues. You double my pay as the chairman of the board.
Right.
Welcome, everybody. Yeah, sad news since we were with you on Wednesday's watch party for the start of the Rolex Sydney Hobart yacht race. And as I'm sure everybody on here knows, there have been 2 tragic deaths in that race, people getting smacked on the head, actually, which brings up the question, should more of us be wearing helmets? There are people wearing helmets in the sport now, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Steve Groover's on. And hi to Steve, Pedro Foiling Sailor, Claire Harrington, the esteemed Vice Commodore of New York Yacht Club in Backcountry, Greenwich, Connecticut, just outside of New York City.
Yeah.
Don Lunabos, thanks, Don. And Roger Lockhart, light breeze here at the BYC. He's down in Newport Beach. Alan Long, even further south in Mexico. Don Lunabos up north of us in Sonoma County. Julia up by your home in Calistoga. You're actually in Napa, though, aren't you? Napa County. Wine country, nonetheless. Hello to everybody else, including Rick Bannero, who we mentioned at the top of the show. Let's get into it here. We did do this watch party after our regular show Tuesday, and then our Christmas night, Boxing Day down under, we did the traditional by now. We've done this a handful of times, 5-6 times, I think. Mm-hmm. A watch party to watch the 30 minutes before and then the actual start, which is at 1 in the afternoon on Boxing Day in Sydney in Australia. And it was a marvelous champagne conditions. We knew it was going to be a breezy race, and it turns out that it has been and still is for a lot of the yachts a breezy race. We had quite a nice group, Julia.
We did.
Quite a nice group on the Zoom, including Graham, Clark, Ed, and Claire, who came on as Zoomers. And it really makes these shows a lot of fun to have the Zoomers.
Everybody says that, too.
And they do. I think it's because they're just so tired of you and me.
Well, I have interesting things to say.
Get the Zoomers on. And we'll do some more of that and probably next Sunday night, or next Tuesday night for our New Year's Eve show.
Yes.
Last show of this year, provided it's black tie. Don't zoom in unless you're at least you can wear, your boxer shorts or your blue jeans. But you're going to be in a gown. I'm going to be in black tie for our New Year's Eve show next Tuesday, the 31st of December, our time. And at that show, during that show, we will announce the panel's decision on the inaugural 2024 Yacht Racing, Sailing Illustrated's Yacht Racing Person of the Year. The panel's hard at work. There have been lots of discussions behind the scenes since we discussed it on the show on Tuesday, and I'm confident that the gang will come up with a proper decision and probably won't please everybody, but they are discussing it among themselves and otherwise.
Yes. And besides that, it is not the only one at time. You have a chance next time.
And there's a lot of excitement about this concept. In fact, there were a couple of people have posted things on YouTube and otherwise saying, hey, Sailing Illustrated is naming the Person of the Year, first time ever. So I think that should be fun, and we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday night. New Year's Eve for that. John Hanfield's down in the Virgin Islands. I hope you're recovered from your latest travails with that sinking of the boat you were on. Chris Fury's in Melbourne. And there's also, Julie, as you probably know, there's a race from Melbourne down to Hobart as well. And that race is underway. So both these races are going on. John J. Hanfield III says, I love your scarf, Julia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
John Mangino is joining us saying, happy, merry, happy Hanukkah as we close in on the new year and yet another year of doing this. And delighted to have you all with us as the FOSI community, the Friends of Sailing Illustrated, continues to grow. Julia,
sir,
what are we celebrating today? There is a clue behind that lower third.
Looks like cake.
Cake, close. What kind of, well, it is cake. What kind of cake?
Oh, it's fruit cake.
Well done, bravo, Zulu. You got it, Julia. It is National Fruitcake Day.
Oh.
And Rick Panero says it looks like a 47-year-old fruitcake.
But it has new frosting in it.
Well, it's probably been stolen, Gordon Smith is asking or saying. Indulge. That's why I said this is National Fuzzy Cake Day. No, we wouldn't call the fuzzies a bunch of fruitcakes.
No, we wouldn't.
They might call you and I fruitcakes from time to time.
Yeah.
So it is National Fruitcake Day, and indulge in variations of a classic cake from all over the world, or compete to see who can find this fruit-packed favorite the furthest. That's what I would do with it. Either that, Julia, or use it as a doorstop or a small boat anchor.
I know. I think there are good fruit cakes.
Are there?
But I've never tasted one.
Likewise.
I mean, I think by the time we get them, they may be a year old. And
even a fresh one. I detest fruitcake.
I know.
I don't know why. Oops, Stalin. Yeah, Stalin Kuka. How do you say that?
Stolen.
Stolen or Stalin?
Stolen.
Stolen Kuka? Is it Kuka? John Hanfield, I could have used a few fruitcakes for a life raft when his boat sank.
Oh, yes. We haven't heard that real story.
No, we haven't. We should give us an email. We'll talk about that. Groover is saying to Bannero, 47-year-old fruitcake is considered fresh. Well, there's more to the story than this. While none of us know the true creator of the fruitcake, many historians believe that fruitcakes originated from Rome over 2,000 years ago. Historians believe that one of the earliest recipes known comes from ancient Rome, listing pomegranate seeds, pine nuts, and raisins that were mixed into a barley mash. Then there are records from the Middle Ages documenting that they added honey, spices, and preserved fruits into the original mix, but then the American colonies got into the act in the 16th century. Sugar from the Americas, along with the discovery that high concentrations of sugar, about the worst thing you can eat, could preserve fruits, ended up creating an enormous excess of candied fruits, thus resulting in making fruit cakes more affordable and popular in regions around the world. Who would have thought? And bloody hell, Julia, who would have cared?
I know.
But it's in the spirit. We're still in that week between Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's.
And there are times when the candied fruit is good.
And Gordon Smith says, I like a slice of fruitcake smothered in butter, accompanied by a mug of hot tea. Hello, Nadine Francis. I'll bet you're celebrating Christopher Lou Lewis, who's just won the Hobart race. There she is on there with a green face. I hope you're okay, Nadine. She is a leading light at our local yacht club, St. Francis Yacht Club.
Is.
One of the good ones at St. Francis. Nice to see you on. Happy holidays, Nadine. She's probably off work, which is why she works hard, too, why she's on the show. And we're also celebrating today, as we always say, all of you who help support us. Come watch the show, come on the show, like the Fozy did the other night, the Super Fozy, and support us via Patreon. We appreciate so much your support. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Julie Aarons is reminding us that she's in Cleveland, of course. Johnny Carson, used to the late night talk show host here, who was on the air for 30 years.
Was it 30?
Yeah, it was 30 years. Johnny Carson used to say that there's only one that gets passed. There's only one fruitcake that exists and gets passed around. They're probably best used as an anchor. The original fruitcake is probably still around. I would never eat a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
You going to say the word?
No.
That's not a course. Is that coarse language?
No.
Crap. Pindar wanting to know if it's Friday. Yes, it is, Andrew. Hello to you. Greg Norman, fruitcake is an oxymoron. Happy holidays to you. Larry Kennedy, Tom, you eating fruitcake is like cannibalism.
That's a good one.
That's harsh,
That's
Larry, our bimbo friend, Brotherhood of International Markboat Operators in New York City. Normally, David Price, hi from Whangaparoa in New Zealand for the Moth Worlds. Yeah, I've been texting with David and Christian, who have left their native Australia and headed down to New Zealand for the Moth Worlds, starting up here this coming week.
That's got to be good fun to watch.
Well, it is, and a great event, and they are great supporters of our sport, as you'll learn as we progress through today's show, which involves this gentleman and the tragic deaths. That's the theme of today's show, as you all will know, the tragic deaths in the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. This is the CYCA's Vice Commodore David Jacobs, who did that press conference the other day, had the sad duty of doing that, and he did not only a marvelous job, but he made us all proud. He made our sport proud, and I don't know the gentleman. Those of you who do, I hope you will tell him how proud we are here at Sailing Illustrated of him and the CYCA for the way they've handled this tragedy. And it is a tragedy. I mean, there have not been any deaths in that race since the tragic 1998 race that Larry Ellison won, and 16, 17 people? Somebody remind me in the comments how many people died in that horrific race in the 98 Sydney Hobart. And of course, there have been a few other deaths in offshore racing and other racing here and there. It comes with the territory. Shiza does happen, as several of you have said, and we wouldn't wish it on anybody. And you can go back to the 79, I should say, Fastnet race, when that was an equally tragic race. But we'll talk about that in due course. First, let's celebrate the good news, which is that Law Connect, who struggled, as you all saw, were watching the watch party. They couldn't get that big reacher unfurled at the start after they got outside in the ocean, but they did manage it finally to get it out. And then, of course, their arch rival, their nemesis, Comanche, had a mainsail problem and dropped out of the race, and Law Connect went on to win in one day, 13 hours, 35 minutes, and 13 seconds. Is that 1 day or 2 days? I guess it is 1 day, 13 hours. Not a record time, but a fast time nonetheless. Here they are going into Hobart this morning in Tasmania, finishing at 02:35 and change Australian Eastern Daylight Time, which is their current time zone. When it's AEST, that's their winter time, their standard time, like here in the States. And Bravo Zulu 2 Law Connect, a strong T performance, the CYCA put out in their press release, by the crew was the foundation for Law Connect's 2024 Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race line honors. This is their second in a row. Remember, they won just by the skin of their
Yes.
of just by their teeth last year.
Right.
There were 4 lead changes in the last few miles of that race, including right at the finish line.
Right.
Again, with their arch rival Comanche. And according to their Kiwi sailing master, Tony Mutter, he said there was only one change in Christian Beck's crew, Christian the owner, of course, from last year's race. Quote, crew continuity is a big help for us, especially if you know how everyone's going to react in a situation, meaning in tough times, challenging situation. That makes a massive difference, Tony said. He said it came to the fore on the first night, which he said was the toughest part of the race, executing 5 jibes in 35 to 40 knots.
Wow.
Because quote continues, for us, 35 to 40 knots is about the upper end where we're pushing it, but right on the limit. And of course, part of the trick, the big part of this is to know when to dial back so you don't wreck the boat.
Right.
And when to put the pedal to the metal, the balls to the wall, which is not what you think it is. That's an airplane term. Yes, when you push the throttle all the way to the wall. There's those little red and blue or green, whatever they are, balls on top of the throttles in airplanes. You know who told me that?
Yes.
Jonathan Frank, the airline, the 777 pilot and Renaissance man, Fozy that he is. So we had to execute those 5 maneuvers in a really good way, and we did.
Yay.
Tony's saying. Much more than that, speed, we're in a different mode where we're probably reducing sail a lot more and slowing the boat down, whereas in the 35 to 40 knot range, we're right on the upper limit on what we can do on that boat.
Interesting, yes.
He said the race was one of the tougher ones he had sailed in, but knew there had been much tougher, in meaning both this race and others. There was challenging conditions, probably the roughest race I've done out of the 11 that I've done, meaning the Hobart races, the Sydney Hobarts. But we came through it okay. We didn't break too much stuff, and people are okay, just got a few bumps and bruises. I have done much tougher races, though, around the world.
I'm sure.
That's Craig Greenhill's photos this morning, early this morning, as they were coming in to the finish line. They're off the wharf in Tasmania. Here's the rest of the fleet as they currently stand. Law Connect have finished Celestial V70, that Sam Haynes, who's the Commodore, by the way, of the CYCA. Congratulations to them again on another good race. Wild Thing got their keel sorted out. We saw that problem they had in the harbor shortly after their start. Wild Thing 100, Grant Warrington's boat. And by the way, there's a couple of you sent me the video. There's an interesting video from on board Wild Thing. And that whole incident with when they tacked, it's a lot of port starboard stuff going on. Right. And it's a big boat with a swinging keel. And the keel, he could hear him. He's mic'd up, the skipper, Grant is, and he's saying, I got to have more warning on this tack because I got to push the button to swing the keel before we try to tack. And of course, it's very constrained, tight quarters there in the harbor. So there is the top 3 have finished. I don't believe anyone else has finished. Correct me if I'm wrong, if any of you have been watching the results. Whisper, David Griffith's boat is looking like they will finish 4th. They're 6 miles ahead of No Limit, or at least they were when I did this cut and paste about an hour before we went to air. That's the top 5. And we'll see what happens with corrected times. Celestial we'll see. We just don't know about corrected times. We'll deal with that on Tuesday's show. Steve Gruber saying he thinks 17 died in the 79 Fastnet. 7 died in the 98 S2H, meaning Sydney to Hobart Stingray is saying. Ed Worley saying, I think Larry was quoted saying he would never do the Hobart race again. And indeed, Ed, he did say that in the book, the autobiography. Wasn't really autobiography, it was the biographical book another guy wrote. And after that, he did not go to sea again. In fact, I was there when Sayonara was stored for a long time in case Larry changed his mind. It was stored in the Great Lakes area in a big shed. brought back here and then chainsawed because he didn't want anybody else to have the boat. And that the stories about that race are amazing, the books and
Yes.
so on, and as well as the '79 Fastnet. But Mark Turner, the Kiwi Mark Turner, not to be confused with the equally esteemed British Mark Turner, who was the regatta organizer. Mark Turner, the boat builder, who was with us. I did several America's Cup campaigns with him. He's now doing Sail GP's boats. Mark Turner went around, and he was the one, maybe or two, one of very few people on that boat who were still competent in the seaway and the huge, out there in the middle of that storm on Sayonara. And he went around checking for DLAM in the boat and said, "We got a problem, dial it back." And before they really had a problem, they did dial it back. And Chris Dixon, Larry Ellison, and others who were aboard, luckily, dialed it back, and they lived to tell the story.
Yeah.
And when they won the race, first to finish. Luca Craig, as anyone knows what is the difference between fruitcake and does anyone know the difference between fruitcake and Christmas cake? My mom makes a Christmas cake that has a ton load of fruit, but has brandy poured over the top at regular intervals over a month or two.
Yeah.
Back on this, Julie Aaron says, "Yeah, it's so sad. It is always a tragedy. We really thought Comanche was going to win. Congratulations to Law Connect." Yeah, I think we're all in that same mode, Julie. It looked like Comanche was going to sail away.
Yep.
It looked like they were going to sail away and win. We'll get some more into that in a moment. I just wanted to get that headline out of the way. Steve Gruber saying he saw an interview with Ellison at the dock right after the finish of the '98 race, and he was more than horrified. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Stingray's asking about Fujimo. We'll let Clark Chapin tell that story. Christmas cake is for Christmas, Graham Sweeney says. I agree, Graham. In any event, here we go with another photo from the dock in Hobart this morning. Bravo Zulu to owner Christian Beck of Law Connect, who's, of course, Australian. He's an Aussie, and skipper Tony Mutter, who is a Kiwi, and the rest of their team. And this nice photo by Salty Dingo, Bravo Zulu. We appreciate that photo being sent through. And the many others of you, including Stingray, including probably a half dozen of you, sent through links to various stories. And I'm not going to use too much of that. I am waiting to hear more details about the person overboard. I hope we get an interview with that person that went overboard in the middle of the night, like 0300, on what would have been Thursday night, Friday morning, early Friday morning, and got some 2 kilometers separation from the yacht. But everybody must have had a personal AIS or beacon or something on, because everybody went into all the boats, the nearby boats went into the proper mode, and they got the guy. And I don't know the details yet, but we will have those details for you on Tuesday when I finally get some interviews and some reliable information, because I've heard some stuff that's crazy, frankly.
Yes.
Bravo Zulu to them, and we'll get some more details on the tragic deaths in that race in a few minutes later on in the show. In the meantime, let's go to John Emmett and get to the coaching corner. John Emmett is with us again this week, this holiday week, and he files this report from the family farm about the myths in sailing.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Welcome to John Emmett's Coaching Corner. And it's, believe it or not, quite a warm, sunny day here at Imberhorn Farm. I think I'm mainly saying that to try and persuade Lily that the British winter isn't as brutal as someone might think. Having said that, I love the Finnish expression. There's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad clothes, or I should say a bad choice of clothes. But I'm really loving the time off, being back on the family farm and having that well-earned rest and that chance to recharge both physically and mentally. And it's something which is very important. In fact, when I was growing up, we were used to being board, if you like, and you needed imagination, invent your own games and this sort of thing, as opposed to the constant distraction of screens. So yeah, getting back to nature is something very important to me. And I think it's that same sort of reason why I just really like to be on the water. And one of the first pieces of advice I give to people is you have to be keen to take the cover off if you want to make sailing your career, to get the cover off the boat and go sailing every single day. I've seen quite a few people who've had maybe 6 months out and they're just venturing back in, and it's a very warm welcome to see them back on the water. Today's topic, I just wanted to think about some of the myths, the biggest myths in sailing, because there's barriers to sailing, but some of them are perceived and some of them are imaginary. Now, when I went to university, we often used to have a lecture which was information that went through without any thought whatsoever. So the lecturer would write on the blackboard in the chalk, and he would let us copy it down. We would write it with our quill and parchment on the paper, and then he would rub it off, and we would go home, and neither of us would thought about what had been said, whereas a conversation, a two-way process is very important. And sadly, in 2024, I think I saw a lot of disputes in a whole number of things which could easily have been resolved with better communication. And it's very easy to get entrenched in your views and your opinions when you have a strong opinion for whatever reason. And probably the best way to listen is to actually listen in a way to ask a question of somebody rather than listen in a way to provide an answer for them, if that makes sense. Now, the myths of sailing, it's something I really like the FOSI to think about. What are the common perceptions and how do we address them? Things like boat ownership, cost of sailing, accessibility, the physical capabilities, anything like that. Because first of all, we need to define problems, and that way we can find, or at least hopefully find, the solutions. So with that, I hope to see you on the show, and comments, very, very welcome. That's what really makes Sailing Illustrated such a very special program.
It does indeed, John. Thank you very much for that sentiment. And again, without the FOSI, we really wouldn't have a show. We don't do this show for ourselves. We do it not for the FOSI. We do it with the FOSI.
Yeah, so they can educate us.
We can all educate each other.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see John unshaven and with that crazy hat on. There was a lot of comment about that hat in the comments, speaking of the chat.
Yeah.
And, there's this drinking game. I don't know what the drinking game is these days, Julia, but they are no doubt related to John and his hat, and probably you and me, or at least me.
Yeah.
One man's hat is another man's fruitcake, Banneros.
Somebody said if they both got off they're off the boat, I'm sorry, the hat would not be saved.
Oh, well, yeah, that's I didn't read that because it seemed a little crotonic.
Yeah.
But a serious one from Jody Shields. The loss of two competitors is indeed sad, but it does highlight once again that none of us are here forever, and our time earthbound should be cherished and enjoyed as much as we can while we can. Godspeed to those who have lost their lives doing what they loved. And I can't tell you, Jody Shields, how much that means to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of you know, I've got a family member who is in dire straits, and we hope he comes through. And I appreciate that sentiment, Jody Shields, very much indeed. That's the John Emmett Report. The Coaching Corner, John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. And we'll talk about those tragic deaths in a minute. Let's quickly check in on the Vendée Globe, because we've been following that with each and every show since it started on, what was it, the 10th of November?
Mm-hmm.
And this is day 47 of the 10th edition of this single-handed around-the-world race. They've passed those two capes, Cape Hope, with Ted Ryman watching over them, and then they've passed Cape Lewin now. In fact, Alistair Murray is out in Perth, out in WA, for the Taser Worlds, I guess it is, sailing with his daughter in that. More on that later, but there is the Cape Horn, the Corn, as Paul Card calls it, and there is a cavalcade about to pass the Cape. The lead 3 boats, at least, are around, and with just 238 miles, maybe I better go back to that, with just 238 miles between 5th place Jeremy Bayou on Charal and 11th place Yannick Bestaven on Matre, how do you say that, Julia? Maitre, like Maitre D, or Maitre D, right?
Yeah.
Maitre Coq-V. A veritable cavalcade of Vendée Globe skippers will pass Cape Horn tomorrow, meaning Saturday. At forecast speeds, they should pass with 12 or 13 hours from early Saturday morning in a more compact grouping in the end than the last edition, when 9 skippers pass within 25 hours, all on or around day 57. And of course, today is day 47, so tomorrow will be day 48. So there's a bunch of boats well ahead of the previous race's record, and that is at least a clump of them passing the Cape, and that's because of this fast passage, really, from
we watched them come
all the
up
way across, from Cape Town and beyond, from Cape Hope all the way to Cape Horn, and particularly from Cape Leeuwin, the southwest corner of Australia, to Cape Horn. Emmett is saying, replying to Andrew, yeah, this is true. Between Christmas and New Year's, I'm never exactly sure what day it is. That's true for me every day of the year at my advanced age, John Emmett. So here's the leader. He's still the leader. He's actually extended a little bit. Last I looked, he was 30-some-odd miles ahead of Charlie Delon. This, of course, Johan Richaume, who maintains that slim. Well, it's a little bit more than a slim lead, if 8 or 9 miles, I think it was when we looked in on this on Tuesday and Wednesday, but it's now something like 30 or 35 miles, and he looks like a happy camper. And after crossing a light wind zone, leaders Jan Richaume and Patrick Arkea and Charlie Delon and Massif Santé Prévoyance are back up to speeds of over 20 knots. Their priority today has been to go around a small depression to their north while carefully avoiding the calm zone in its center. Crossing the semi-permanent cold front at Cabo Frio will be the topic of one of their key decisions upcoming, which could well influence who gets to the trade winds first, even if they are not that well established, meaning the trade winds. In the meantime, the winds will be quite strong off the South American coast.
No kidding.
And that's where they are. Excuse me, you can see the top 2 boats. These are the leaders, the top 2 boats, Johan and Charlie. And then I've highlighted here Sebastian, because we haven't talked much about him, because he's in third, and a comfortable third. He's north of the Falklands now, but he's well behind the 2 leaders, so he doesn't, sadly, he doesn't get much ink, Julia.
I know.
But that's Sebastian Simon, who I think is 700 some odd miles behind those 2 leaders. And Groover's reminding us, Steve says, that a good point, that a 35-mile lead is only about 2 hours if there is any wind at all. And yeah, Jules Verne would be shocked. Alan Long, Andrew McIrvin, indeed, it's that he would be shocked to think that a single-handed yacht could be getting around the world in less than 80 days.
Yes.
Around the world in 80 days. Da 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 da.
I saw that the other day.
Is that a song from a movie, or was that the name of a movie?
Yeah, I think it was the name too.
What's the name of the movie? Was that the name?
I think
the
so.
Movie of the same name.
Yes.
You never know if that's.
I'm remembering that, but I think it was.
So that's where they are, and here is your leaderboard. The top 5: Johan, Charlie, Sebastian, as we mentioned, Thomas Rouillant on Vulnerable, and Jeremy Bayou, the 5 really favorites. We expected all 5 of them to be in the hunt, and they are, although with the distance now back to these 3. I mean, this is 1,300 miles. Thomas Rouillant's 1,300 miles back, 1,500 miles back for Jeremy Bayou. So these 2, Johan and Charlie, are in a class of their own. Still a long way to go. And things will happen when they get into the doldrums, and who knows if this thing will accordion up
right
in the meantime or then. Nicholas Lundvin, Paul Mealhat, Boris Herman's moved up. Boris doing better. Sam Goodchild will feature him in a moment. And Justine Metro, who was in 11th, we told you the other day, had moved up into the top 10, and she is still there.
Good for her.
So we haven't seen many updates from Boris Stingray. You're asking about that, but I'll look for it for Tuesday's show and see if we can update ourselves on Boris. In the meantime, Conrad Coleman, whom we've also been watching, the Kiwi who's now claiming America also is his home country, living, I think he's now domiciled. Is that the right word?
Perfect.
Huh?
Perfect.
Domiciled in, you remember?
No.
Colorado.
Oh, that's
He's
right.
a Colorado Rocky Mountain High John Denver song.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we singing songs today?
Well, because we need to.
We do. It's a good way to cheer us up after the tragedy of this race. And, you know, I'm just happy. I'm no joke. I'm happy when I wake up in the morning, and I do, as Jody Shields said, I do count my lucky stars. Having you as a landlady, not kicking me out for making too much noise or being a crouton. But I'm just happy to be alive with the Fozy at this holiday time and be able to have done this now for 8 years. Hard to believe.
Yes.
Here's another happy guy. This, of course, is Sam Goodchild, the Brit. He was in 8th. He's dropped to 9th, but he celebrated. We showed you this picture the other day, and I love these Christmas pictures of these guys and gals on their boats. That is from his mother, Sam's mother, Judy, sent him off with a cake to eat on Christmas Day. And he did, apparently. That looks a lot better than any fruit cake I've seen, Julia.
Yes, indeed.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
And bravo, Zulu, to him. Here's his
A
video.
little Boxing Day update. The wind's just starting to come in for this depression before Cape Horn. So it's the 5th one of the Southern Ocean. And we are 849.6 miles from Cape Horn. So we should be there day after tomorrow. And at the moment we got 25 knots. We're expecting up to 30, 35, and probably quite a bit more sea state, up to 5 meters. So it's a decent depression, but nothing that we haven't seen already. So got all the big sails down and small sails now. Made a massive mess of the cockpit. Got a little bit of tidying up to do, but all good. And I'm looking forward to heading north, even if it looks like we're going to be upwind for the whole way. Or a lot of the South Atlantic's upwind anyway. Anyway, looking forward to getting north and or pointing north anyway. We're at 50, almost at 59 south here. It's a long way down, so a long way to go. See ya.
Okay, that's his report. And I thought the most, there's a fire hose of media in the from all the boats, and a lot of it is in French. So we try to sometimes we grab a French one.
Yes.
And with subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
But good stuff. I think Andrew Pindar, his domicile is Colorado, but his residence, not to be litigious or legalistic, if that's a word, I think his residence is Lorient, but I think he's probably claiming Colorado as his domicile. Back and forth, lots of interesting comments. Here, speaking of interesting, look at this photo of Sam Goodchild's yacht Vulnerable heading toward Chile. A couple days ago, I think this is a little bit of an older photo, but it was on the website, and the Vendée Globe website. BBC ran it in a story that I read this morning, and that's Sam's yacht Vulnerable. Yeah. Terrific stuff. Speaking of Pip, she's doing the Melbourne tomorrow or maybe the next day. She had been not going very fast. In fact, one of her her latest video report said that she'd made no progress in the last X many hours, 24 to 36 hours ago. Not only she'd made no progress, she'd apparently gone backwards.
Oh.
Or as the late, great Commodore Harry Anderson would say, whom Claire and a few others of you will remember, great guy and a mentor to me, he would call that going backwards, he'd call that retrograde motion.
Yes.
Retrograde motion.
Yeah,
so she has backed up a little bit, but here's where she was. That map has not been updated. I couldn't find anything more recent than that. But again, she has, you can see she's closing in on Melbourne. And now I guarantee you she's closing in, because here are the conditions. And I don't know if this is the same weather system. One of you may know this, whether it's the same weather system that's sweeping across to the Sydney Hobart boats. But she's today apparently in 35 to 40 knot winds and 5.5 meter seas with her little storm jib up on one of her outriggers. And she will be making better, and it's a westerly, so she'll be making better progress if she can keep herself dry. She didn't send out any videos, by the way, so it's probably pretty bumpy for her as she does close in on Melbourne. Hopefully gets there today, not today, but tomorrow or the next day over the weekend, meaning Sunday, probably Monday, down under. Now, I did also hear from Alistair, who is not in Melbourne. He said, he opened saying, obviously all the news here is about the 2 deaths in the Sydney Hobart and the miraculous rescue of the gentleman who was overboard. I didn't know the 2 guys, but thoughts are with the families. Very sad indeed. Sailing is a tough sport, the immediate past president of Australian Sailing says, and Alistair Murray, and he says, and generally safe, but unfortunately we have these tragedies that remind us to respect the elements and do all we can to practice all safety measures. I will miss the show today as I will be en route to Perth out in WA, where I'll be sailing in the it's the Nationals, not the Worlds, the Taser Nationals with my daughter, Claire. Good for you, Alistair. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I will miss Pip Hare's arrival in Melbourne. Her video posts show her to be one hell of a sailor, and I was hoping to catch up with her for SI, for us. A big contingent will meet her in Melbourne. Should be plenty of press coverage. Happy and Merry Christmas and New Year to Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy.
Oh, nice.
Ed Worley says, yes, always respect the sea.
Absolutely.
Any other comments we need to go back up to? A lot of great comments.
Mm-hmm.
Retrograde, a compositional technique in music, Claire Harrington, the organist, is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Slowboat came out I think Rick Banner, I looked at it, I thought it came out like 23 hours ago, so that's why I didn't run it, and I think she's into this breeze now, so I think it was a little more than 10 hours, but you may be right. Maybe it's closer to 10 than 20, but whatever. She's hopefully making good progress toward Melbourne and be there in the next couple of days. Thank you, Alistair Murray.
She's a great hero, though. When I thought about her 800 miles out with nothing.
Well, exactly. And, all ink is ink. I'm sure she would much rather be in the race, continuing the race and having a good go, but it's tough. Mm-hmm. I'm sure she's heartbroken, but you did see when we showed that video of her the other day when she said, and she was tearful, but I'm resolved to do the next one. So good for her. I have resolved. Okay, let's do our This Day in History. We're only 43 minutes into this show. Might be a little shorter than usual. But let's get into This Day in History, Julia.
Okay.
What happened on this day, the 27th of December, in 1831?
31.
And here's your first clue.
Oh.
Who is that?
Lamb chop.
Who is that?
I don't know.
Stingray saying that Pip's vids on YouTube, while everybody's figuring out who that is, Pip's vids on YouTube are averaging 50,000 plus views since her dismasting. Yeah, all ink is ink.
Good for her.
Ryman agrees Pip is a hero. Don't panic. Just got on with the jib. Get on with the jib. I think he meant, I love Pip, Greg Newman is saying. Yeah, Greg down in SoCal. Mm-hmm. Good man that Greg Newman is. Darwin, Gordon Smith, ding, ding, ding. He gets it.
Oh, congratulations.
He gets it. The applause. Bill Wingrove, George Schuyler. Nope, Bill Wingrove. Good guess, though. It does look a little bit like Schuyler. And from the same era, when those big mutton, what do you call those, Julia? Mutton chops?
Lamb chops. Yeah,
they were mutton chops.
Yeah.
The last batch of fruitcake baked. Okay, so we have identified Charles Darwin, of course, the Brit, 1809 to 1882, in a photo. That's actually a photo taken. It must have been the very early days of photography, 3 years after AC0, after the first running of the America's Cup in 1854. So this Charles Darwin, This Day in History, Julia, here's your second clue. Anybody else know? Origin of species. Nope. Steve Gruber, close. That's obviously related. Stingray says Bell. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Oh.
That is the name of that yacht. Of course, he went around the world on that yacht. Set off on Beagle. Well done. Chris Exley's got the answer on this day in history. The HMS Beagle in the Straits of Magellan. This obviously is a drawing. And this illustration by Robert Taylor Pritchett, who was another Brit. And that is what happened on this day. Beagle sailed from Plymouth Sound on the 27th of December, 1831, under the command of Captain Robert Fitzroy. While the expedition was originally planned to last only 2 years, it lasted almost 5. Beagle did not return until the 2nd of October, 1836. Darwin spent most of this time exploring on land, 3 years and 3 months on land, actually, in 18 months at sea.
That was quite a trip.
There is the voyage. It's just hard to imagine, Julia, for me at least, maybe not for anybody else, how anyone would just say, okay, here I go. I'm not quite sure what there is around the world, but we're going to go find it.
Right.
Hopefully the Earth is round and not flat, which, of course, by the 1800s, they knew it was round. People came back and had gone around the world by then. There is their voyage from Plymouth down to South America and up to the Galapagos and across to New Zealand and Australia, and then back through Cape Town over to South America, again, Bahia, and home to Plymouth in England. Quite a voyage for 5 years, the round-the-world voyage of the Beagle, which resulted in a long time later, 1859, finally, the publication of On the Origin of Species by means of natural selection. That's really the key phrase in that, isn't it? It could be the origin of species by... Tell me what?
Isolation.
Well, not by isolation, by the creator.
Oh, yes. Of course.
That's what I think sets that apart. Thanks to the History Channel for that cover of that original publication. Or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. And he, of course, also coined the expression natural selection.
Yes. And yes, absolutely.
The strongest survive. Andrew Pindar, look out for a very exciting project in the making which relates to this, coming from the fabulous other Conrad Humphreys. Andrew knows about a lot of stuff.
He does.
Ed Worley asking, was the voyage a government program, over budget, and not on schedule? What else here? Darwin couldn't select which idea to write about, so he asked his wife, Gordon Smith says. Oh, dear. So this book, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, a groundbreaking, as you all know, groundbreaking scientific work by British naturalist Charles Darwin, is published in England on my birthday, the 24th of November, 1859. Not that I was around then. Darwin's theory argued that organisms gradually evolved through a process he called natural selection. In natural selection, organisms with genetic variations that suit their environment tend to propagate more descendants than organisms of the same species that lack that variation, thus influencing the overall genetic makeup of the species. Given Darwinism, how is John Emmett still the strongest foe? That's cruel.
Yes.
Stingray. The definition of natural selection. So it was on this day in history, Julia, in 1831.
Oh, I will remember that.
HMS Beagle with Charles Darwin on board departs England for a survey of South America, and look to what it led, to use your Stanford construction. Look at to which it led. And he said later, it determined my whole career, you think?
Yes.
And speaking of his careers, I don't know if this was I don't know where this is from. I found this on Wikipedia, but I seem to remember a reference to it in the past. You Brits may know, because it's obviously a caricature. And you had this is, I guess, before Fleet Street Press, but was that in Puck? Was that what publication. Do you know that was in Darwin Caricature after publication of The Descent of Man? Pretty good drawing, actually, if you go back and look. And this is I think, a photo. Yeah, it is. It's a photo by his son, Leonard, at about age 65. That is Darwin. So that's a
That was good.
pretty good drawing.
Yes.
Punch, that's it. Punch magazine, Gordon Smith is saying. Is that where that first appeared? Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, his wife, and thanks, Andrew, for the advice you've been giving me of late, as always. His wife and family went to church on Sundays. He went for a walk. Well, as you all know, it caused a huge uproar.
Yes. Because it did not.
The church was not amused.
Not at all.
And I read on Wikipedia when I was putting this together last night, this segment, he apparently added as the penultimate or maybe the ultimate, the final sentence, something to the effect that, well, you have natural selection, but you still had the creator. Something had to create all this stuff in the beginning.
Right.
Which is how a lot of people finesse
Yes.
creationism and natural selection in this
That's
whole thing.
probably right.
Graham Sweet, he says Darwin went ape about that caricature, about that picture.
Graham, only you would say that.
And Andrew agrees with Gordon Smith. It was probably in Punch, that humorous, that satire publication, been around for a long time. Okay, there is that caricature of Darwin, and that wraps up this day in history. Let's now get to the serious situation that they faced. And bravo, Zulu, a lot of good stuff has come out of this, if anything can, in this tragedy. First of all was this statement, and they got it out. Not only the Commodore did his thing, but this statement, bravo, Zulu, because it was simple, it was clean, it was prompt, it was clear, and they said, the CYCA, there have been tragically 2 separate deaths overnight in the 2024 Rolex Sydney Hobart yacht race involving the vessels Flying Fish Arctos from New South Wales, and you've heard the media calling him Bowline, but I'm sure they pronounce it Boland. Tell me if I'm wrong. From South Australia. The race committee were advised both crew members were hit by the boom. I'm not quite sure that's true. I think one maybe got wrapped up in the main sheet, didn't they?
But that came out later.
It came out later, got wrapped up in the main sheet, and maybe got smacked their head on a winch, is what I heard one of the reports. But nonetheless, they got smacked in the head, which is causing people to talk about helmets again, including Captain Jack, John Schaefer, who I was talking to this morning. The race committee were advised that both crew members were hit by the boom. So whatever, they have suffered traumatic injury and death. Flying Fish Arctos was sailing approximately 30 nautical miles southeast of Ulladulla, I think that's pronounced. Tell me if I'm wrong, you Aussies. Fellow crew members performed CPR, but they could not revive their fellow crew. Boland was approximately 30 nautical miles northeast of Bateman's Bay, and crew members administered CPR. A short time later, officers from the Marine Area Command were informed that CPR had been unsuccessful. As these incidents are both being dealt with by the water police, and all family members are yet to be contacted, this was on their Friday, I guess, we cannot provide further details at this stage. Our thoughts are with the crew's family and friends of the deceased, needless to say. But always nice to say, further information will be provided as it becomes available. So simple, clean, clear, all the facts, just the facts, ma'am. And the best they knew about why it happened, and the best they knew about what the efforts to try to resuscitate, keep them alive. So bravo, Zulu, to the CYCA. Now, one of the things that has disturbed some people is this quote that came from various places. I think I found this on the Rolex Sydney Hobart yacht race website. This cruise crew will include a number of veterans from previous years. This is on that Arctos boat, on Flying Fish Arctos, from previous years. At least the couple of these people were senior serious, but there was an international crew of trainees competing in the race as a personal challenge.
I read about that someplace.
So yeah, that's there were some not so many experienced people
But this
on
was,
that boat.
was like a training boat, a training ship, which they've done it this way forever.
Well, for a number of years, that's
Yeah.
right. And this may not have been the only training boat in the race,
Right.
from what I was seeing. Larry Kennedy, God bless the families. Correct main sheet, then the winch, Alan Long was saying for this boat. Water police. I like that expression, actually, Ed Worley, water police.
Mhm.
Ulladulla, Warren Schasser in Brisbane is correcting me. I think he means Ulla. Is that right, Warren, if I say Ulladulla, not Ulladulla? Ulladulla. The media, yeah, Ed Worley, I agree. I watched the press conference. Ed is saying that the media were croutonic. The Vice Commodore was superb. The media were croutonic. Hamish Nickel, very sad news. Thoughts with the families, no doubt, of the deceased crew members. Exactly. Okay, Ulladulla. I thank you for helping me with that.
Mhm.
So that's this Flying Fish Arctos. Now, here are the two boats. This is a photo, the only composite photo I found anywhere of those two boats. You can see Flying Fish on the right and Bolin on the left. They went into the nearest harbor. There were pictures of the boats in the harbor, but I didn't think it was necessary. Thank you, Warren Schasser. I didn't think it was necessary to show the pictures of the boats in the harbor. But just to show you again what an esteemed sporting event this is in Australia, the Prime Minister tweeted, "Our thoughts this morning are with the two sailors that tragically lost their lives in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race overnight. The Sydney to Hobart is an Australian tradition, and it is heartbreaking that two lives have been lost at what should be a time of joy. We send our love and deepest condolences to their families, friends, and loved ones." I thought that was a great statement by the Prime Minister. I don't know where he is on the political aisle, on either side of the aisle, but bravo Zulu to him. Anthony Albanese, is that how you say that? The Australian Prime Minister's statement on X. Now, as to the Vice Commodore and the Cruising Yacht Club, I can't say it any better than the post this morning by Magnus the Magnificent, by Magnus Wheatley, on his Rule 69 blog. And he said, and that of course is, he is really, I don't think he's missed a day since the America's Cup was over on this new blog of his, but he's doing a fabulous job, Magnus is. Headline title was First Class Communications, David Jacobs, and this is the Vice Commodore, and the CYCA make absolutely the right decision in the face of tragedy. And this gentleman, again, whom I do not know, was superb in this press conference. I agree with that. Worley, the media were croutonic. And I'm excerpting from Magnus's otherwise long post on Substack, on the Rule 69 Substack blog. To the families of Roy Quaden, that's the name, or Quaden, and Nick Smith, the two sailors lost in this race, condolences of the most profound order are due from the entire sailing committee. This is Magnus writing. To the crew members on board Flying Fish Arctos and Bolin, respectively, this is for sure the hardest of times, and you can't help but feel for what they are going through, both individually and collectively. And exactly, well put, Magnus. A dark time for them, and they will need all the support necessary over the coming days, weeks, and months. Awful for them, and I understand that the police and the social services have all swung into action or helping those crews, as you would expect. Magnus goes on, another excerpt from his article. What I can say with absolute certainty is that the response from Vice Commodore David Jacobs has been first class in the face of such terrible news. From the outside looking in, the communications have been peerless. Now, this is from a guy, from Magnus, who's in the communications business.
Right.
Imparting news that simply no one wants to give. Jacobs has been the model of doing it right, and the decisions taken by the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia not to abandon the race has been spot on in my book. I couldn't agree more, Magnus. Harking to the absolutely fundamental principle of yacht racing that it is the skipper's decision whether to sail in the first place or to sail on, Jacobs is quoted as saying, quote, "So it's the skipper's decision whether he or she wishes to race or to retire. The skipper is able to look at the conditions, their local conditions, because as you appreciate, over a race of 628 nautical miles, there are different weather patterns all around, so the skipper can decide whether the weather pattern that they're in is too dangerous or that they'll sail into, and if they want to retire, whether it's safe to retire, which is another
Yes.
question, another issue, which Magnus addresses in the next paragraph. The Commodore said, in fact, the Commodore addressed it himself. He said, quote, "We have quite a complex structure around the race to help with safety, and if we cancel the race, that structure falls away, and our view is that the crews are safer with that structure over them than for it to fall away." In other words, don't call the race off, because the other boats are out there who maybe are well found, who are in good shape and can help out, such as in the case of the guy who went overboard in the middle of the night, and they managed to find him with his personal Z-Perb, whatever it was that I think Captain Jack and others were saying. So I think this is a really key point. So all the croutons in the media and otherwise, why didn't you call the race off? Well, he explained this perfectly, and Magnus has picked up on this. It may not be safe for boats to try and get back to the coast. They may be going across very difficult seas. They may be going into very bad weather. So they're the main reasons why we do not cancel a race, unquote.
Yes.
And Magnus went on to say, spot on, hear, hear. And Vice Commodore Jacobs also alluded to the fact that this edition of the race, I think it's actually the 79th, Magnus, this edition of the race was actually no worse than what has been seen before.
Yeah, true.
These are tough decisions, right, Julia?
Right.
In the face of tragic facts, but they are the right ones, and they are the reason why the CYCA is such a respected force in offshore sailing. With officials like David Jacobs and others, they have made absolutely the right decision, and that should be both recognized and applauded, which we do, you and I do here,
Indeed.
Julia, at Sailing Illustrated, and I'm sure all of you on here. Alan Long is saying exactly.
Yep.
Ed Worley is saying, yes, Magnus is correct. Ollie Boys, hello, Ollie, saying, must have been awful for those on board. Indeed. Indeed. Bill Wingrove down in Tampa, Florida. A guy from our club got hung up in the main sheet and has been in a wheelchair since. I always warn trimmers to be highly aware of your head in a jibe in a breeze. Indeed. Oh, we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
On big boats and small. Ted Ryman, totally agree. So Magnus, Bravo Zulu to you, as well as to the the Cruising Yacht Club, CYCA. Great stuff. Here is Magnus researching either his current book or his next book, and someone will know, if Magnus is not on here, someone will know where that picture was taken.
It's in New York Yacht Club Library.
I'm not 100% sure of that.
I read that.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean,
I've been in that library a lot of times, and I don't remember that. That may be the Royal Yacht Squadron's library. But it may be. You may be right, Julia. I just don't remember that being New York's library, and I'll tell you who would know, and that is Vice Commodore.
Yes.
Claire Harrington, who's on here. Magnus the Magnificent. Yeah, Claire is agreeing with me. It's not the New York Yacht Club library. So
No, not in.
It's not. So somebody may have gotten that. If you saw that in the lower third someplace, they may have gotten that wrong. I think that's the Royal Yacht Squadron's library.
Okay.
Alan Long is saying jibes should be counted down as tacks. Yes. The problem, I think, Alan Long, with this is that it may have been, we used to say Chinese jibe, and that's now politically incorrect. It may have been a crash jibe. It may have been that the front came through or a squall came through and jibed the boat, or they lost control of the boat in a seaway. And you all know, you've all been there, and the boat went through a jibe. People are hanging on for dear life, and they don't know the boom's going to come over and the main sheet's going to come over. So Rich Fishbeck, yes, I believe this happened at 0300-ish on what would have been early Friday morning, because the race started there Thursday, Boxing Day. So I believe that's when this happened, was the first night, 0300-ish on Friday morning. Magnus, nice piece of writing. Thank you for that.
Oh, as always.
As always, right, Julia?
Yep.
And Bravo Zulu to the Vice Commodore. And several of you will ask, why was the Vice Commodore giving this presser and not the Commodore? Well, as many of you, several of us have chit-chatted about that. The Commodore is on the second place boat, and maybe the owner. He is the owner of the second. Yeah, he is. And I confirmed that this morning with the Prices, with Christian and David, and I asked them in a text, was the CYCA Commodore in the race? Is that why the Vice did the presser with the tragic news, not the Commodore? Because several of you have asked.
Yes.
David came right back. He said, yep, Sam Haynes is our Commodore. They're proud members of that club. Mm-hmm. And is the owner, I think he means, and he's on the boat for sure, of the Volvo 70 Celestial, which is a top-notch boat and has been year after year. And Christian said simply, we love Sam, their Commodore. And they're proud of their club, as well they should be.
Correct.
A couple other comments here. Bill Wingrove, an odd wave at the wrong time can ruin all the plans during a jibe. Yep, indeed. Andrew McIrvin, National Archives in Kew in London, okay?
Right.
He would know.
He would.
Mr. Doctor, thank you for that. Clayton Embley. Julia, we haven't poured any of Clayton's bourbon. Is this a good time to do that?
Oh, why
In
not?
your
It's
coffee?
getting chilly.
It's the holidays. And I should also say, just to lighten us up a bit, Clayton, we tried we had ribs.
Yes.
When you came down for our Christmas dinner.
Right.
And how much, Julia? Tell me how much.
That's enough.
Bourbon cream.
Yep.
Courtesy of, I better put it on camera one so we can see this. Bourbon cream from Clayton Embley. He's getting some PR here, but he sent us several bottles. But we used his you say you don't call it rib rub, you call it, what is that? Barbecue sauce on the ribs on our Christmas dinner on Wednesday.
Right.
And it was good.
It was good.
Everyone here pronounced it good. And I have to ask you, Clayton, you sent 2 bottles, a yellow bottle, one with a yellow cap and one with a green cap. We tried the green cap because Julia was convinced the yellow cap was the hotter. No.
The red.
Did we use the yellow cap or no, it was yellow and green.
Yeah. We used yellow.
We used yellow. Oh, did we? Because you
Yes.
were convinced the green was the hotter of the two.
No. Red is always the hotter.
Okay, but I'm going to start again, Julia. This is confusing.
Yes.
There's a yellow and a green. I thought the green was the hotter because in Spanish food, the green's the hotter, the green sauce, and Chinese food, the green's hot. And you said, no, this will be cooler. So we used the green sauce because we all thought you thought it'd be cooler. It was fine, but it wasn't cool. So
No.
I asked Clayton, is the green sauce, the green bottle cooler than the yellow or vice versa?
Red's always hotter.
There's no red. Julia.
Yes, there was.
You're talking about the color of the fluid
Yes.
through the bottle. I want to know the top. Eggnog, cheers. How did we get off on the yellow was kosher, Mark Collins says. How did we get off on this?
I don't know.
Chris, actually, back to the serious matter. Unfortunately, both incidents involved the boom main sheet. That's what happened to John Fisher, on Scallywag. Green means go, Rick Bell. Well, that's why we did that. We did the green sauce. So I don't know if Clayton's on here, or Clayton, he will know. That's from Savannah, Georgia, that sauce. Thank you, regardless. But the green has the right of way. Green means the red was Ted Turner's favorite. The red is more mellow. See, Julia?
Oh.
The red is more mellow. Yellow means go faster. Steak sauce illustrated. Yeah. Rib rub illustrated. Barbecue sauce illustrated. Okay, thanks to David and Christian Price for those comments. And by the way, while we're taking this up now to better news than the sadness we've just been through, I want to also congratulate these two. You know who that is?
Yes.
Those are the Aussie Olympians and our Fozy. At least we can claim Olivia Price is a Fozy. I'm not sure Evie's ever been on the show, but Evie Hazeldine, the crew there, the forward hand on their 29er, or on their FX rather, it's not a 29, it's a 49er FX. And Olivia Price, they finished 9th at the Olympics this year, not as well as they'd hoped to finish, as high. But the two of them have become television commentators. They were the stars, in my opinion. Olivia was out there on the water for the start, as you all saw when we did the watch party on Wednesday our time. And then in the finish, I got up this morning to watch the finish.
Oh, you
dark,
did?
yeah. It wasn't that early our time. It was actually, I think the finish ended up being about 7:30 our time.
I just didn't look.
So I was up watching it, and there is Evie, her crew, Olivia's crew, doing the finish. And she's out on the boat, the chase boat, and she's on the TV. But Evie's not quite as experienced at this as Olivia, because Olivia's been on Sailing Illustrated so many times with her very loquacious and friendly family. And her brother, Harry, of course, is another. That's a family of Fosey, or a Fosey family.
A Fosey family.
A Fosey family, any way you cut it. Bravo Zulu to them. They did a terrific job, and I was proud to call them friends in Fosey. Johnny Harris's barbecue sauce from Savannah, Georgia. Regardless, it was good. It was the green one we tried, and everybody's now on the green and yellow and red. We'll try the other one, Clayton, in due course. We appreciate that very much. Any other comments here before we leave this sad situation? And also, Bravo Zulu. I mean, I'm so proud of the CYCA. People can do a good job, or people can, make a balls up of it. And they did a terrific job. Andy Armstrong checking in from Hampton, Virginia. I once sailed a Sunfish North Americans there and got stung by the jellyfish going out through the jellyfish as we launched our Sunfish off the beach. And we'll talk about what you do if you get stung by a jellyfish, right?
Yep.
Slap some sauce on my wiener, Gordon Smith is saying. What kind of a comment, Julia? Give him the finger wag to Gordon Smith. John Emmett says, I coached a girl once from the British Virgin Islands. She gave me some hot sauce as a present. I put 3 or 4 drops on my pasta, and it nearly took my head off. Not sure if it was a thank you or not. Okay, did we see anything? Clarification from Clayton, which one is the hot one? Not that it matters. We're going to try them both. Okay, this gets us, thank God, off of wiener sauce. Gordon Smith. I'm surprised at you. The last leg. And we have an interview here by Bow Caddy Media with St. Francis Yacht Club's own Christopher, better known as Lewis. And Lou is a navigator extraordinaire. He's the navigator on the winning yacht on Law Connect. He's the navigator here with our past Commodore, with Bo Froelich on his boat, and just a superb Mayan. Well done, Julia. And he's just a superb guy. And he was interviewed before the race about the weather, all of which seems apropos for what, and I'm not going to run the whole 7-minute interview, but I thought you would find at least the first couple minutes interesting. Here it is.
Christmas Eve at the Cruising Yacht Club, and we're here with our absolute go-to man, Chris Lewis, Lou, who's the navigator aboard Law Connect, and we always like to talk to him about the weather because he gives us such good insights, and for non-technical people like me, it's really helpful to understand what's happening. We've got quite an interesting forecast here. So Lou, we're having a look at the screen here. Yep. At this point, we're on start time. Tell us a little bit about what we're doing here in the first few hours of the race.
Yeah, so the first few hours of the race, we're way up here in Sydney with the green dot. We have a nice bit of breeze to be able to get out of the heads, and then you turn the corner, and the breeze is going to be nice and building, and it's not too long between when you get into this downwind mid-teen section and start rocking and rolling in the 20.
And you're then getting a good rundown, so presumably you're going to be coming, most of the big guys going to be coming a bit offshore and then coming back onto the run line later. What's the sort of, what would typically be the game plan for the fast boats?
Well, the interesting thing about our routes, the beginning part of the race has been pretty consistent, that you sort of want to end up at this point because there's a nice bit of current that you can get as well.
Okay,
so you have favorable current and you got this beautiful downwind conditions, and we're just ripping, and it's going to be a really fun part of the course.
It's going to be wet and fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you were saying earlier, though, is that you think that this sort of northerly airstream will actually be a little bit shorter. So maybe just scroll us through to where you think we're going to be starting to sort of get that westerly coming through the strait.
Okay, so if we start stepping it forward, it's like that truism in life, all good things must come to an end. Again, you see the building,
So that's
downwind breeze.
5
so
o'clock
we're
on the
absolutely
Thursday.
screaming.
Yeah,
Yep.
still there, but you're beginning now to see we're at 8 o'clock on Thursday, on Boxing Day, and you're beginning to see that westerly coming through the strait. Yeah.
And you got, at this point, we have 35s, even 40s, and
Wow.
the gusts,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it is full on
Yeah.
at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
full throttle, total adrenaline.
Yeah.
But we're going to be keeping an eye on this part over here, which is
Yeah.
effectively the trough or front coming
And that's
through.
beginning to influence. Then this is 11 o'clock on Thursday
11 o'clock
night.
at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're just keeping an eye on this thing and trying to anticipate when it hits,
Yeah.
because it will be quite dramatic, and there's forecasted to be squalls and quite powerful wind on the edge of the front, and of
Right.
course it'll be at nighttime, so
Yeah.
you can't see it with a
Yeah.
visible
Of
eye.
course. Yeah.
So then we keep pushing it forward, and you see it washes all the way
So
through
we're
the.
at 2 in the morning now, and it's really well outside the strait, and it's beginning to affect anybody coming down here as well.
Yeah. And so you think about the sea state on here in particular, you know, you'd had the swell running down the coast, and now you have the wind-driven waves here. And just to make it even more of a washing machine, there's also an eddy right out in the middle of the Bass Strait. So sea state is going to be a pretty big factor as well.
Take us on a little bit further, because then it gets interesting down in Tassie, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if we keep punching it forward, you know, just when we've been living in this world of so much breeze, then all of a sudden you can see, if you take between there and there on the rum line, all of a sudden this little bulge of lighter breeze.
And that's just the lee mostly, the effect of the lee, yeah?
Yeah.
And that can come quite a long way offshore, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see just by recentering it, there's a little bit of a wraparound effect of the breeze coming through there, and then probably some through there. And the problem is, and it'll be interesting trade-offs, that if you want to try and avoid some of that, you come offshore, but then by the time you got it to Tasman Island, all of a sudden you may end up, you know, going upwind to do that. And you see, look, that thing
bulging.
just extends out. It almost looks like a little flame. So it gets further and further, and then, you know.
Okay, well, you get the
depending on when you
idea,
get through
and
there.
this is before the race, obviously. On,
So this is,
I guess, did they do this Tuesday night or Wednesday morning? I guess Wednesday morning, just before, or sorry, Thursday morning, just before they took off at 1 o'clock on their Thursday. And you know, Lou is celebrated around here, as I'm sure he is beyond that. What did we ever do before we had computers, Julie Aaron said. And by the way, this is Law Connect's third win. So they had the last year, this year, and then some years ago, and they had a string of runner-up, of bridesmaids, second place finishes.
Right.
Yeah, bravo Zulu to them. And there is also an interview by Balcati Media, who was standing by dockside. I didn't put it in here because it was just, you know, you've all seen a boat dock and people clap and back and forth. But then he also did an interview post-race with Lou about what really did happen. But this is so close to being exactly spot on that I thought you would enjoy seeing that.
Indeed.
In retrospect.
Indeed.
Okay, anything else on that topic before I move to Alan Long saying, yeah, Balcati Media did an exceptional job this year. Yeah, indeed. Rick Manero, yes. Okay, Rick's saying his discussion on Balcati Media at the conclusion was amazing. I'll look for that and see if we can run that on Tuesday's show for those of you who have not seen it. In the meantime, thanks to them. Much appreciated. And that'll do it for our coverage of the Rolex Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race until next Tuesday. And Julia, your favorite segment.
Yes.
I have but one seasonal slide. This is one slide apropos the Christmas season, which is just rapidly winding down.
Yes.
I remember when this song came out, I thought this was the coolest song. We played it in my little garage band. We played a lot of Tijuana brass.
Yeah.
You see this?
Yes.
It begs a caption contest. It came from Andrew McIrvin.
Oh.
I don't think he made the cookie, but he may have. As a doctor and surgeon, he may have made the cookie. I don't know. But the quote he sent through was, "No one wanted to eat my gingerbread cookies."
Oh, Andrew.
It's terrific.
It is.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. I love Christmas cookies. Would you eat that, Julia?
Oh yeah, I would.
I would too. I think it was terrific. I could think of some other. I bet you Gordon Smith can think of a caption for that, can't you, Gordon? And we didn't even say testicles in this show today. Thank goodness. Okay, everybody, that's it. Thank you, Andrew, for the gingerbread cookie. That's my only Whiskey Tango Foxtrot for this show. Ryman's pretty good. Nobody had the guts to eat it.
Oh!
That was good.
Claire said starboard looks okay.
Starboard, yeah, as well. It's good. Good day. Alistair is saying, good night, Tom, Julie, and the Fozzie checking in late from the airport en route to Perth. Okay, have a safe flight, Alistair. Gordon Smith says, my stomach wasn't in. I got to go back to that slide.
Yeah.
My stomach wasn't in it.
Oh!
Alan says, Alan Long, too much purple number 12. Graham Sweeney, what makes a biscuit that's full of guts? The gingerbread man. Clayton Embley, they taste great, but they're a bit bony.
Oh,
My gingerbread crust broke, Steve Grover is saying. You all are so damn clever.
Yes.
And to come up with them so quickly, it's not like they had, 15 minutes to think about it, Julia.
No, it's lovely.
A little more in your gingerbread man cookie than you thought, Bill Winthrop is saying. Okay, enough. The finish line is well and truly with us. And Julia, you like to say.
Oh, yes. You must not forget to like, follow, and share.
Indeed.
And share especially.
And keep going. And the lower third.
Comments are welcome, even in replay.
Keep going.
From Sailing Illustrated.
And?
You may also contribute to patreon.com/join/sailing.
Thank you all very much for your support via Patreon. And Graham Sweeney says, now that's the roadkill I would eat. Now, we won't see you next year, Jeff. We'll see you unless you're down under. Those of you who watch our New Year's Eve show here, it'll be your next year down under. And Matthias Collins, Happy New Year to you. We'll see you all on New Year's Eve. Black tie.
Yes.
And we'll probably have, should we have a Zoom? So anybody wants to zoom in on our New Year's Eve, we'll do a Zoom.
Why not?
And you can jot it down, but it's our normal Zoom, 267-220-6570, passcode 1851. And check carefully, because a couple of you had trouble trying to get into the show the other day when we did the watch party. That's been our one and only meeting ID and passcode for a long time. And we hope that'll work for you if you want to join us on New Year's Eve, next Tuesday evening, the 31st of December, our well and truly last show.
Yes.
In 2024, our 8th years. We're about to go into our
and unbelievably
9th year. Julie Aarons, I know, I remember it well. I'm old. See you, everyone, on Tuesday. Indeed, we will. We'll see you all on Tuesday. Thanks to everybody who gave us audio, video, and images for today's show. Julia, final thoughts.
I thank God for good sailors.
And for good Fozzie.
And good Fozzies.
Great Fozzie, indeed. And Kitson says it's his wife's birthday on New Year's Eve, therefore he's busy. So he'll see us in the new year. We'll see you all in the new year. Down under, at least. We'll see the rest of you on New Year's Eve. In the meantime, we hope you have a great consideration, those of you on the panel, of who is going to be our yacht racing person of the year. It will be announced on next Tuesday's show. Mm-hmm. Okay, New Year's Eve show. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your weekend wherever in the world you are. And if you can go sailing, go do it. Even if you go ice boating and sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.